Good afternoon. It's Sunday, December 22nd, 2024. We're approaching Christmas here. You're watching Co-op for Two, and you're watching letter number 2 of a bespoke mystery being created for us by someone who's in the chat right now, Matt C. Set in the world of New York Noir, a game that I've been working on for 2 years now. So this is a play-by-mail game. Every week we get a new letter, we read it together, we come up with a reply with some instructions of how we want our investigators to go investigate. And then a week later, a reply shows up. We read and discuss. Hopefully when we get to the end in 4 weeks or so, we will have solved the mystery. Let's check in with the chat here before we do our little bit of recap. Bookkeeping, any bookkeeping to do. Yesterday we had a rare afternoon session. We played a Deadbolt Mystery Society box called High Stakes. Took us about 5.5 hours. Had some ups and downs, some easy and some hard stuff, but it was enjoyable. And we'll be playing more games in the next week or so. Still to be determined whether we'll do anything live here over Christmas Day. But then in the week between Christmas and New Year, we will be doing something elaborate. We're going to be playing John Keene's Razorhurst Blood Alley case, which will take us several days to finish, maybe even 4 or 5. All right, I'm curious what everyone is up to as we approach Christmas, whether you're have any plans, spend it with family, if you've got some good presents coming in the mail. Marco says, just played Green Poison by the Hidden Games series. Green Poison is one of the cases that for some reason never got translated into American. Maybe that's the best way to say it. This is a company that's, I believe, German. I translated most of their cases. Green Poison was translated into English, but never made available to America. I don't know why. Hidden Game series is one of the good ones. All right, so here we have the New York Noir game materials, and here is our new letter. We're going to do a little bit of recap before we get started. But I did want to show you something before we get started to show you what I've been working on for New York Noir recently. I showed this off on one stream. I forget. I don't think I showed it off on the New York Improv. Did I show this off last week as part of this series? If I did, then I won't show it again. I think I showed it off on a different stream, though. So it is appropriate to show it here since we are playing New York Noir. So as you know, I've been working on tools for creating cases for New York Noir. I have written 2 cases, a demo case and a much longer case. And the whole idea, hopefully, is that we'll get more people. What? Why did that happen? Oh, that's V4. Sorry. The whole idea is to encourage authors to write cases, and so I wrote some new functions for letting you easily create newspapers. So it'll lay it out with the nice banner for different newspapers and different number of columns. It automatically generates this little heading here with the correct day of the week for the date. And we've got a couple of newspapers capture the heading. Eventually, I'd like to customize the different newspapers better so that each newspaper has its layout of whatever font or style would be more believable for that paper. New York Times is the paper of record in New York City, so that's probably what most of the newspapers will be. But if you're writing a case for New York Noir, it's now very easy to create a nice looking newspaper. And then what I've been working on for a week or so is a new fingerprint mechanic in New York Noir. Those of you who have played Gumshoe know where this inspiration came from. It's similar to the way Gumshoe uses fingerprints, but a little bit different. I've only printed out a couple pages, but actually the actual criminal fingerprint directory is about 100 pages. And it starts off with some teaching you about how to use fingerprints and classify fingerprints. You might know that fingerprints can be classified in a couple different styles, a couple different gross patterns, and then a little discussion of what kinds of things you might be able to do if you find a fingerprint, couple tasks. And then the directory is made up of two halves. The first half is organized by fingerprint classification. So if you found a fingerprint, you'd first classify it, and then the different classifications have different proportions. So there's some very rare patterns like a tented arch. If you get that, it's going to be much easier to find. If you get found a whirl, it's going to be harder because there are more of them. So you might go through and try to find a match to your fingerprint. That's the first half. If you found a match, then you would look up this lead number in your casebook for your case. That's where it differs a little bit from Gumshoe. Gumshoe, you've got mug shots with criminal history and fingerprints and their name. This is a more generic system, so the author can figure out how they want to use it. Then the second half of the fingerprint directory is organized by person. So here's a person, and here's their full set of 10 rolled fingerprints that they went to when they were booked into police, all of their 10 fingerprints. So maybe if you found a fingerprint, you could go then look up who it is, see the rest of their fingers, figure out which finger they've left a fingerprint for. Maybe that's important. Maybe you'll discover they're left-handed or right-handed, or that there were multiple people who left fingerprints, etc. So that's the fingerprint mechanic, and now we're working a little bit on criminal history mechanic. All right, so New York Noir Improv. Let's go over our first letter. We won't do such a long recap every week, but I think since last week was our first week, and if you haven't watched last week's, you probably should stop watching this one. But let's do our little bit of a recap here for this letter. So we get a letter from Bill Wiggins, who you know used to work with Sherlock Holmes, and he's now in New York, and he's been sent a case, and he's given us a little budget, $25. Whatever we get, whatever's left over, we get to keep. So we're going to try to keep this investigation under budget. He tells us that he's actually got a bunch of people that can be used to conduct this investigation. These are the people we're going to be directing around. We've got a very expensive, experienced, hard-boiled detective, $2 a lead, so we're not going to be using him often. Then we've got a war veteran medic, a burglar, ex-burglar, a impersonator, Buster Keaton impersonator, who's expensive, but maybe he could sneak into someplace. He tells us why. Then we've got a beat cop who's a little bit of an alcoholic, but he's cheap. Then we've got Wiggins' daughter, Alice, who's also cheap. And then if we need an expert, we can ask for one. And here is the case, the letter that's being forwarded to us from Michael Lant, who's a stock market trader on Wall Street. And we note that we're in September 1929. We know a little bit about what happens in 1929 with the stock market, but that's sort of beyond the scope of what we're supposed to know here. Okay, so it's a weird letter because on the face of it, the case looks trivial, silly. Why is a big deal being made of this? And what is the case? This guy, Michael Lant, has a weekly card game, a game of hearts, a trick-taking game. It's held at Francis Tavern. We get the name of the person who runs it, who keeps track of the scores, It's called Discard Hearts. Hearts, essentially. He said 2 tables of 4, 6 of us are regulars, 2 guests. He says, I suspect foul play. This is the heart of our investigation. Foul play in a game of hearts, which maybe is not even being played for money. That's an odd thing to try to involve Sherlock Holmes in. But let's just continue going on for a while. We've also got a guest who we didn't follow through on, Earl Floyd. Okay, so here are the regulars. We've got Sawyer Hartman, a JP Morgan bank worker who also executes trades at Wall Street. Perfect teeth. Then we've got Dean Kimmel, a wealthy investor, made his money on the railroad, borrowing his way into stocks. Maurice Hamoud, who owns an insurance company, American Family Insurance, but dabbling in investments. And James Jimmy Cunningham, another stockbroker who's a friend of our guy who's writing to us about the case, Michael Lott. Okay. We get told a little bit more about our client, Michael Lott, who works in Irving Trust Bank. Okay, we get told a little bit about hearts. And we're told in the beginning, you divide up all the cards, and then you get to share a couple of your cards with someone else. Pass off 3 cards to your neighbor. I don't know if you get to choose neighbor. I don't forget the rule. But anyway, then the goal is to go out to finish all of the tricks with as few hearts, with winning as few hearts as possible. And here's where the crux of the mystery comes in. He says, something's not right. Kimmel and Hamoud always seem to win. 2 of the players of their group of 8, 6 regulars, seem to keep winning. But the odd thing is they're barely trying. They make terrible plays all the time. Along with Hartman, another person who also makes terrible plays but doesn't keep winning. And he says, and then something happened. Last week, Hartman was passing 3 cards to Kimmel and dropped them. And our guy, Michael, got a look at them. And they were very low cards. They were all low cards. And he says, that makes no sense. Why would you pass low cards to someone? That's sort of like not even a beginner would make that mistake. The whole point is to keep low cards so that you can lose tricks. I guess low hearts. So he says, then I started paying attention. He says, it seems petty, but I have a good reason for telling you about this because I started paying attention and I noticed there's something fishy about their stock trades. He says they've been selling stocks that reliably accelerate, I guess that go up in value very quickly. And he says a lot of us are trying to get our hands on these stocks and purchase them. So his intuition as a stockbroker tells him something fishy is going on. Something's weird with them being able to win these games, and something fishy is going on with the stock market trades, which could come back and haunt all of them, get them all in trouble. Okay, he mentions a couple of the stocks that have been rapidly accelerating. So he was talking to Jimmy about it. That's his other friend here. And he said Jimmy and him did agree that they're going to start trying to dig into this. They're going to look through the ticker tapes to see what purchases Kimmel and Hamoud have been buying, etc. Now, before I get to what we asked them to investigate, we should discuss the brilliant insight that one of the people on the channel noticed. So, but before we get to that, here are the couple things that we observed on the face of the letter. First, we hear that little mention of our guy Michael Lant being good at detecting about using hand signals. He talks about I forget where he says it. He says that we use hand signals even to order lunch. So we're thinking, are these people communicating information by what they're doing with their cards? Are they don't care about the game, so sometimes they're losing, sometimes they're winning? But then we thought, that doesn't make any sense. If you're coming up with some scheme to do some fraudulent stuff, you could just go talk about it somewhere off to the side whenever you want. You wouldn't need to play a game to trade information. Although it is possible that the guests are significant. But we didn't really think so. And then we had some questions like, are they even playing for money? Why would you care about winning and cheating if you don't care about money? And then the brilliant insight was this. Who was it that came up with insight? Was it, who was it that had this insight? All right, so here's what was noticed. He says, there's nothing illegal about our game. Presumably, that means it's not about they're not playing for money. He says, however, it does play a small part in some honoraries and privileges. For example, yesterday's game determined who would need to cover the Baltimore phone operator's lunch break. So it sounds like they're having a funny little thing where whoever loses gets punished and has to do this chore. Okay, so it was DJ that came up with that. And then the click, the light bulb went off. Is this really about ensuring that the right person gets the right seemingly insignificant honoraries and privileges? In this case, is it about someone deliberately losing so that they can get punished by having to sit in and take over someone's job of manning the phone operations for a little bit? And that feels to me right. If that's true, it means that it's not the people winning that we should care about, but this guy Hartman, who's passing his low cards, although we're not 100% sure about, he does say last week, Hartman deliberately passed cards, low cards, so he was trying to lose, it seems. And then, for example, yesterday's game determined. So it's not 100% clear if the time that Hartman was losing also had this kind of punishment to cover the phone operators. But we were thinking, is that what this is about? Is getting these honoraries, privileges, or punishments so that this person who loses or wins gets to sit in and get information that's coming across the wire about planned trades, planned purchases or sales, so that they could use those a little bit early, sort of insider information. You don't need much of a margin, right? If you know that in 1 hour, huge numbers of some stock are going to be purchased, you can get in there, buy it early, then the purchases come in, the stock market value goes up, and you sell it and you make a profit. Or maybe coming over the line is bad news about a stock, and you sell your stock before the news hits the airwaves. To me, that feels most likely here. But with that theory in mind, we came up with our letter, which we mostly came up during the live stream last week, but it was tweaked afterwards on Discord. If you want to help us do that kind of thing, you can jump into the Discord for this channel. There's a link on the YouTube page. So we were thinking about who to send where. We were hemming and hawing. We decided not to send our top investigator. Remember that we are sort of making up the rules along with Matt, who's writing this case for us as we go. There are no hard and fast rules for this. None of the replies are pre-written. So we just come up with whatever we can, and we self-impose restrictions, and Matt decides what he's going to allow us to do. So Alice is so far my favorite person here, even though we haven't heard from her. I just like the idea of this 15-year-old daughter doing her amateur sleuthing. So we decided that we had questions for Michael Vaught, our client. And rather than asking Wiggins to write to him, to write back, we said, okay, send Alice there. It's nice and safe. Get her to get some generic answers from Michael Vaught. So these are basically clarifications that we've asked for. What other rewards and punishments are there for winning and losing? What happened last week when the guy lost? Is Hartman always losing? And then we had a question for him. If someone was working the phone to get early information, are we right that they could make use of it to gain advantage? We thought about maybe we'd have to ask an expert for that. So we've told him if we don't know, who would know? We're asking basically for what expert would know about sort of insider trading. And then we said, well, look, can you think of any other reason why you would want to rig this game? Are you playing for money? Basically, lots of clarifications. How are the players split between the tables? That was to help clarify who's losing to who. If Hartman is secretly helping Kimmel win, who helps Hamoud win? Because that's the other person that we're told is regularly winning. Okay. And then we asked Wiggins to pass on to Michael Vaught some requests. I guess Alice can pass that on too. And we said, can you figure out past scores? And that was the other very clever insight. I can't remember if that's happened on stream or in the Discord. But what someone noticed is this point about the guy running the game. We're told he's very rigid in his methods, requires everyone to write down their scores and hand them in. And at first, someone was thinking that this is some passing messages, but no, I think what we've got here is not part of a scheme, but an opportunity for us to get evidence and find out who won when. So we're basically asked Michael, can you go talk to Mason, who runs the game, and take a look at these records? See if he'll let you look at these records. He's probably not going to let us look at them, but Michael's one of the players. Can we see who's been losing and winning and on what dates? And then maybe we can match those up to some insider trading. And we say we want to correlate these with the rewards and punishments to detect possible gaining of insider information. So we've got an opportunity to be able to correlate those because this guy keeps records. Then our alcoholic cop we sent to the bar just for fun. He's cheap. He doesn't cost us much. He probably will do it for free just for some drinks, to ask if he's seen anything else interesting about the game while he's going to ask the bartender if the bartender has noticed anything weird about the card game. And then Roger Vernon, who's sort of our catch-all guy. Vernon is the medic, right? Yeah, the person that reminds our guy of Watson. We asked him if he's got time, stop by each of the other regulars, Dean Kimmel, Hartman, and then Hamoud, and we also asked him, stop by AT&T. We know the recently accelerated stock, and we wonder if maybe there's maybe talking to AT&T will give us a clue about the stock price jumping recently, and maybe it was some event that one of our guys could have gotten inside early information about. I tried to look up the railroad and I couldn't find it. We were told that there were two. I think this got added afterwards. Debbie wanted us to do this for a while we were playing the game, and I was reluctant, but then afterwards I realized how useful it could be. So the two stocks that we're told have recently been going up are AT&T and the New York Central Railroad, but I couldn't find the New York Central Railroad. So we'll have to see about that later. Okay, so that's what we sent. And today we're going to read the reply to those requests, which I have here. And I have made a little form for us. I don't know why I started doing that. There we go. A little form for us to fill in when we make our next set of moves, and a separate document for us to keep some notes on. All right. Anything I haven't covered before we get into our reply for today? As I said, I won't normally be doing this long of a recap, but I thought it might be useful to get everyone on the same page. Anything else from the chat, or are we good to go? Melissa says, just started Root of All Evil. I've only gotten halfway through the journal so far. I'd be curious to see what you think of Root of All Evil. I recommended Root of All Evil in my holiday mystery tabletop guide, which if you haven't seen, you may want to check it out. 70 games recommended over 20 categories. And I did also just post my hour-long review of Time Stories Revolutions series, which we played on the channel and quite liked. I've gotten my hand on a couple of science fiction escape room games recently. Star Trek Cryptic behind me, and then Murder on the Moon, which I bought from Courtney, used at the Facebook Puzzle People group. And so when I was doing my guide to tabletop mystery game recommendations, I did lots of different categories. Like, let's say you want to go to med school, here's the game to play. Let's say you're like Spycraft, here's the game to play. And I realized when I got to science fiction, boy, we haven't played many. There aren't that many science fiction mystery games. You'll remember we played one fan-written one set on Mars. That was pretty good, but it made me realize that we need to pick up a couple sci-fi ones. All right, no one in the chat is saying anything, so I guess we'll just get into this. Now we're going to see, this is all uncharted territory. We're going to see what kind of replies we get to our request, right? Like, how did we get everything we wanted? And how's our budget doing? All right, so we've got 4 pages here, 4 double-sided pages. We've got some long stuff to go through here. Let me just clear out some of this. Okay. So it looks like, if I look at the top of these, we've got a letter from each of the 4 investigators that we tasked with doing work. I guess we'll just go through them in order. Here's the reply from Joe Fillion, who's the beat cop alcoholic. Let's see, where does he live? West 57th Street. Oh, that's the other thing I should have done in my recap, just to show you, because you're getting a look at New York Noir. The pages are out of order. Look for Wiggins' letter. I see. Okay, I was looking at it backwards. This is the front. Okay, first reply is from Wiggins. Thank you. That was Matt, and Matt even remembered how to use the check keyword, which lights up the light in front of me, which you can't see, but that's what got my attention. Okay, let me clear the light. Good. Okay, so we'll start with the letter from Wiggins. But before we get to there, since you're sort of learning about New York Noir, that's one of the exciting things that we're doing that Matt agreed to do, which is out of Matt's comfort zone, is to use the world of New York Noir to set everything. And so these are the materials for New York Noir. You can play a demo case for New York Noir if you want. Just download. You don't have to print anything out. A short case that I wrote, and then a long case. But anyway, here's Manhattan. Here's the northern tip of Manhattan, and all the way downtown, the southern tip, the first settled by the Dutch, is the financial district where everything in our case is happening. So if we turn to the financial district, we can see here a little bit of history of the financial district, but here's where we are. All of our activity is happening here in on Wall Street in the financial district. And I pointed out the stock exchange is over here somewhere on Wall Street. And then all of our main players are all working and living downtown here. So we'll keep this open nearby. All right, now, Matt said I was starting to read this in the wrong order. All right, so I had it this way. So we're starting with the letter from Wiggins. Let's see what we've got here. Dear Mr. Rykor, I went ahead and sent your requests to our investigators. All of them have written back. You should know, Alice wasn't able to speak to Michael Lant. Apparently, he isn't home very often. She did have an exciting day, though, and write you a response. For this reason, I forwarded your questions to Michael Lant directly, and he wrote back to us as well. Was a little extra legwork, but no harm done. Okay, interesting. Maybe we should be visiting him at his work. Makes sense. He did say, I think we didn't make note of it, he did say he works at Irving Trust Bank, and I think we sent Alice to his house. That might have been a mistake. We should have sent her to his work. Okay, no harm done. Roger Vernon snagged a few leads, but he ran out of time before he could visit American Family Insurance. I'm sure he could do this next week if requested, but we might have overloaded him with leads. Okay, there you go. We asked him to do too much. We did sort of put all the work on Roger. Okay. Something odd happened yesterday. I received a visit from Detective Alexis Cohen with the NYPD. I've never crossed paths with Cohen, but he seemed friendly enough and was curious about the services I provide. We shared a cup of tea. I was a bit taken aback when he mentioned a case involving Lant. Asked if I've crossed paths with him. Apparently he's conducting an investigation and thinks Lant may be involved somehow. That's all he was willing to share. Not sure if he found out about our case or how he would have, but I said nothing of it. Kindly reminded him our cases are confidential. He thanked me for my time, and that was that. Well, that's interesting. Lant is involved in a different case? Our client? That's tricky. Puts us in a delicate situation, doesn't it? I'll let you know if anything else comes of this. It was very strange. I'll try to find out more if I can. Remember, money is limited. We'll always have more information later. Don't spend it all at once. Okay, we went down from 22 to 1875. So we spent... That doesn't seem right. Looks like... Oh, yeah, 2, 3, 25. All right. Well, we're okay. We're okay. So if we spent $3.25 each day, that would give us not quite 6 days. All right. 6 weeks. All right. We're okay. Wow, that's weird. All right. Well, that gives us a whole new thread to pull at. All right. Let's see what Michael Lant says. Replying to Wiggins with the answering the questions we asked. Thank you for forwarding your investigators' questions. If they would like to follow up in person, I have an exchange at Irving Trust Bank. Yeah, that's, I guess, where we should have sent Alice. I'm there most evenings after the exchange closes when we're not playing cards. I shouldn't be surprised you asked about the possible motive. I don't want my own biases to cloud your judgment, but I do have a feud with Maurice Hamoud that motivated me to escalate my concerns about him. I'm not saying the two issues are related, but the man's character is rotten. I'd like for someone to finally prove it. I've been a customer of Hamoud's company, American Family Insurance, since January. Hamoud told me about it at the game. Carrier started the game up around the same time. I believe Hamoud worked directly for Herman Whitwer in Wisconsin before expanding the company into more traditional markets in New York. He's got a personal feud with Maurice Hamoud. Character's rotten. I don't own any property, but Hamoud convinced me to purchase a life insurance policy. I still own the policy through the end of the year, and I have no issue with it. But I'm ashamed to admit I missed a payment in April. Life got in the way, and I simply forgot to pay Hamoud. I quickly paid him back 2 weeks later when he reached out to me. Well, Jimmy overheard my reputation getting dragged through the mud in the interim. Hamoud was making character attacks against me for not paying him, suggesting my finances weren't in order. It was a slimy thing to do to someone who simply made a mistake. Interesting. He became close with Dean Kimmel shortly after that. I used to work with Kimmel a lot, but he's mostly avoided me since April. We hardly make small talk anymore at the card game. None of this has impacted my livelihood yet, but I worry any other knocks to my reputation could cost me my job and the means to provide for my family if my managers catch wind of it. I don't think this is accidental. Hamoud has earned some clout by warning others about me, and our feud is no secret. I think he's trying to beat me at the game as well as make me look incompetent. I know this all sounds trivial, but I need to redeem my character if I'm going to find new opportunities at the exchange. Well, this seems very human. It's very realistically human for someone to suspect that another person is trying to sort of ruin their reputation. It doesn't quite feel right. I'm not sure what this timeline stuff is. I guess I had a lot to get off my chest. I want to address your other questions. Before we do that, though, I wonder if someone is trying to ruin his reputation, part of a feud, could they have fed false information to the cops? Are they trying to get him in trouble? Are they trying to make him the fall guy? Marlene says, why wouldn't the game be an issue? I don't understand that comment. You'll have to be more clear. All right, let's keep reading. Most weeks, okay, he says, I want to address your other questions. The punishments and rewards vary week to week. Most weeks, carrier finds someone who needs help at the exchange. That's the core of our insider trading idea. I don't even know if you would call it insider trading. It's almost like arbitrage. It's getting early information before it makes its way to the public, which is very similar to insider information. Insider trading, insider information is where someone has access to information because they're part of the company before it gets out to the public. So this is very similar, except here we're saying someone find out the information before someone else due to their position. Okay, so that is very interesting. A couple weeks ago, the telephone operators were understaffed, and an operator was stuck without backup. This was the part, let's see, a couple of weeks ago. Sawyer Hartman ended up stuck with the privilege of covering her lunch break. I looked her up. Okay, so here's Hartman. Lost and got the privilege. Stuck with the privilege. It's hard to tell if that means he won or lost. But where are our notes? Hartman is the guy who seems to be deliberately losing. This was the insight of DJ, that it's not the people who are winning that are cheating. It's more like this guy is deliberately throwing games, and here we have a little bit of confirmation about what we thought. Is Hartman the key here? Is he deliberately losing so that he gets these jobs? Okay. I looked her up. Her name is Margaret Layton. Now that you mention it, Hartman does lose the most of anyone. I can't think of a motive for him to lose, and I don't know him well enough to speculate. Hartman might be helping Hamoud as well. I only saw his cards that one time, but Kimmel and Hamoud spend enough time together that they could both be up to something. I have no idea why Hartman would help them, but I saw what I saw. Okay, this does seem consistent with our theory. Hartman does lose the most of anyone. Okay, and we got a name of the phone operator that needed assistance. Like, this is our number one lead we want to follow. We want to talk to Margaret and say, do you ever hear information that could be useful if it was leaked? Could you use is any of the information you hear on while working the phones, could it be used to place trades? And maybe also, what did you see Hartman doing while he was manning the phones? Okay, this is our number one. We might want to send, well, we'll talk about who we want to send there. The punishments can be unpleasant. I should know. After Hartman, I'd say I'm the second most frequent loser. I'll try to think of as many examples as I can. So far, I've had to buy everyone lunch, lock up at the end of business, cover for phone operators, and 1 week, Carrier made me hike up all the way to his home to walk his dog. The worst one was sweeping the floor. The custodian was on holiday. It took me half the night to clean up. The winner of the game always gets to ring the opening bell next Friday, so Hamoud and Kimmel get their moment in the spotlight often. Okay, that's pretty cute. So most of the time, the losing things are just punishments, and the winning thing is always this nice thing. Okay, if you haven't seen them, what happens at the stock exchange is the New York Stock Exchange opens every morning, and they bring in like guests to do the physical ringing of the bell from a little balcony to open the stock exchange. And it's sort of like a privilege, like the mayor might ring it, or some famous businessman might ring it, or some movie star and stuff. So they make it a thing. All right. So, but there's no real benefit. You can't make use of that benefit from winning. So I think we're still on our track of our idea of deliberately losing. D says, I wonder who decides the punishments. It does seem like it's kind of random, but we do get told who is deciding it. It's the guy who's running the game, right? He says, Carrier, who's the guy running the game. We probably want to make sure we talk to him about that. And then he says, sweeping the floor of what? Maybe it's the bar or Carrier's office. Friday's game was nothing new. Hamoud won and I lost. It looks like I'll be cleaning the bathroom this week. It was hard to hide my displeasure. The guests, okay, so now we've got more about the guests. Notice that Hartman is losing when there's an interesting thing for him to do. And we asked if one of our question was if Kimmel and Hamoud won, and we saw evidence that Hartman was giving cards to Kimmel to help him win. We were asking who's helping Hamoud win, and he's saying, you know, it could have been Hartman then too. Okay. Friday's game, nothing new. Hamoud won. I lost. I'll clean the bathroom. He says, now we asked him about the guests. The guests both worked for Capital Growth Investment. One of them, Ben Jansen, sat at my table, along with Hamoud and Hartman. To answer your question, we rotate weekly. Carrier has some kind of system. The guy running the game is deciding all of this stuff, what the punishments are, who sits with who. We add the scores up at the end to see the winner and loser. I took Carrier aside at the end of the game and asked if I could see the old scores. He scoffed at the request. Apparently, they're already filed away in his study at home. Well, that's realistic. So much for that. Well, we tried. I found Hamoud's last couple of sales in the ticker tape. It was pretty strange. Shortly before he sold his New York Central Railroad shares, he borrowed those same shares. There we go. I've heard of borrowing from the banks, but not borrowing shares. Here we're looking at the beginnings of options trading. You're buying puts. You're buying a stock. Let's see. We're talking about shorting. He's buying a stock, borrowing money to buy a stock, knowing it will go up. So you borrow $1 million to buy a stock. You know it's going to go up. It doubles in price for $2 million, and then you sell it right away. You get $2 million sale, and you give your $1 million back, or you give your $1 million. Let's see. He's not borrowing money though. He's borrowing the shares. It's a little weird, but basically that's what he's doing. He's borrowing shares. Sell it. They go up, and then he sells them back. I've heard of borrowing banks, but not borrowing shares. It seems he still owes them to the lenders. I found a similar pattern with Kimmel and AT&T. Borrowing shares, I guess that's a different way of looking at the shorting of stocks or options. Let's make sure that makes sense. Borrow stocks from someone. I guess what that means is it's a little weird to borrow stocks, but I'm guessing that basically, let's see what it means. It means that he's saying, let me have control of the stocks. I'll take 1 million shares of this stock, and I'll give you those 1 million shares back in a week. Then the stocks, if they go up in value, that doesn't help you. But if they go down in value, what? I mean, if you know what's going to happen with the stocks, you can benefit. But I'm trying, we should be able to wrap our heads around this. You borrow the stocks. What do you do with them when you borrow them? If they go up in value, if they go up and down in value, they go up in value, you sell them. Then they go down in value, you rebuy them back for cheap, and you've made a profit. There you go. So you borrow 1 million stocks, 1 million shares. They suddenly go up in value. They used to be worth $1 each, so now they're double. So now they're worth $2 million. You sell them, you sell half of them, or you sell them all. You get the $2 million. Remember, you still owe this guy 1 million shares. Then the next day, the price drops to 50 cents a share. Now you can rebuy that same million shares for 500,000, and then you give them back to the guy you borrowed them from. Now he's still got his 1 million shares, but you've made $750,000 in, or whatever I said, $1.75 million profit, because you sold them when they were high, and then you rebought them when they're low, and then you give them back, which is basically what the options are. You're basically, well, okay, let's not get into it. Point is, if you know the prices are going to go up and then drop, then you can make your profit. I guess they don't even have to go up. If the shares are worth $1 a share, you borrow 1 million and you just sell them. You sell them and you make $1 million, and then if they drop in value and now they're half price, you take the money you made, your $1 million, you take 500,000, you rebuy them and you pay them back. Now the guy you borrowed them from has the original 1 million shares, and you've got your $500,000 profit. But this is why options trading is so risky, because it only works if they drop in value. If they don't drop in value, then you're in big trouble, because you're going to have to spend twice what you got for them in order to pay them back. But if you know they're going to drop in value, then you can make a good profit, and you didn't even need any cash. Okay. I don't know when options trading came about, but it seems like these guys are pioneering it. Okay. So similar pattern with Kimmel and AT&T. Shortly before he sold his railroad shares, he borrowed those same shares. Yeah, there you go. You borrow them, you sell them, then they drop. So what we're going to want to investigate, if our theory is right, is did they drop after? Debbie says, borrowing is when a brokerage loans out the shares of a stock to an investor. Traders often borrow stocks to sell them short, buying additional shares at a lower price to return the borrowed stock. There you go. That's what I said, although not very cleanly. All right, so they're shorting. They think they're going to drop in price. Okay, so the question we have then to confirm our theory. So if our theory is right, here's what we should find. That shortly after selling them, they drop in value. Did they drop afterwards? And then the follow-up question, is it insider information that let them anticipate the drop? Or is it just that they're clever? I think that covers just about everything. I'll let you know how the game goes next week. All right. Oh, here's Alice. Okay, let's see what Alice has to say. Dear Mr. Reichler, I'm on the case. I went to Michael Lott's house like you asked Saturday afternoon around 2 p.m. with a whole set of questions. He wasn't home. But Mrs. Lott was. She answered the door when I knocked. I asked if her husband was home because I had a few questions about his case. She looked tired. What's all this about? Now Michael has young ladies running around trying to solve his card game for him? You better come in. Michael's not home, but I'm curious what he's put you up to. I followed Mrs. Lant into the building to her apartment just past the entrance. We took a seat in her parlor and she brought me some coffee. Dad never makes coffee, so it was quite a treat. A 15-year-old girl drinking coffee. That makes sense in the 30s, 1920s. There was a baby sleeping in a cradle nearby, so Mrs. Lant asked me to whisper. She lit a cigarette and I started. Mrs. Lant, your husband hired us to figure out about his coworkers. I've got some questions. Maybe you'd be willing to. She snatched the notepad out of my hand just as I was pulling it out and poured over it. Hey, give me that back. Who's Joe Fillion? Roger Vernon. Can't even spell our name right. Listen, I'd love to help you, but you're on a fool's errand. I do hope you clear the air because maybe my husband could spend a little less time playing that game and a little more time. Well, anyway, she put out the cigarette. Listen, I'm sorry. I haven't slept in a few days. Susan's been keeping me up. Michael was here a few days ago and he was ranting about that rival of his, Hamoud, getting another one over on him before bed. I wish he could just leave it at work. I don't know the answers to any of these. She handed me back the notepad, but I'm worried about him. I know he's just nervous about his job, but he's obsessed. I hope you can help him get some answers and let this go. With that, I thanked Mrs. Lant for her time and let myself out. I felt like I had wasted the trip, but then I noticed something. There was a suspicious guy down the block on Water Street towards Broad, leaning against the side of the building holding a newspaper. Somebody was watching me, and he was still there. I kept walking very smoothly, like nothing was happening, until I crossed the street over to Moore, circled the block to get the jump on him. I peeked around the corner on Broad, and he was still there. I spotted a newspaper stand nearby and grabbed a copy myself so I could flip the script and watch him. Trust me, I was really sneaky. He lingered for an hour. The man was wearing a gray trench coat and a bowler hat. Never got a look at his face. Eventually, he started walking towards Whitehall and took a left, so I followed him at a distance. He stopped and turned his head, so I quickly pulled the newspaper up and acted real casual. After a moment, I peeked back over the paper, and he was turning left again onto South Street, then another left. We were back where we started, but he kept walking north on Broad Street for a long time. It was convenient because I was basically walking home. I was getting kind of bored when he suddenly zipped right onto Wall Street. It took me a second to catch up, and when I looked down Wall Street, I lost him. I'll do a better job next time, I promise. Marlene says, I would assume there's a price to borrow the stocks. Yes, there absolutely is. Okay, this is wonderful, but it seems like we should probably retrace this path. All right, Alice is resourceful. Like I knew she would be. I knew she would be. All right, let's see if we can't trace this path here that Alice is on. So we need to start with Michael Lant's apartment. This is his apartment, Water Street, apartment 1B. Okay, but that doesn't give us the block number, so let's look him up. I knew Alice was going to be resourceful. I just knew that she was going to be able to handle herself. Okay, Michael Lant. $100 block. Okay, so Michael Lant is here on Water Street. All right. What does Alice say? Okay. She goes out. He's on Water Street on the 100 block. A suspicious guy down the block on Water towards Broad. Okay, so here's Broad Street. So she sees someone on a corner here. Leaning against the side of a building holding a newspaper. She knew he was watching him. Half hour ago, he was already there. She's still there watching this apartment, presumably. Is this one of our cops? We don't know. Okay, she crosses the street over to Moore. Where is our Moore Street? Okay, she crosses the street. I guess she goes over here to this little alley, Moore Street. Then she circles back around the block. I guess she's going this way or this way. She peeks around the corner on Broad. I see. So he's on Broad at the corner. She goes here. She circles back. She looks down Broad, and our guy is still there. So she grabs a newspaper so she could watch him. He's watching the apartment. She goes around, picks up a newspaper, and plants herself where she can watch him. Okay, he's wearing a gray trench coat and a bowler hat. Can't see his face. Eventually, he starts headed towards Whitechapel. Okay. He takes a left on Whitechapel going this way. Down Whitechapel. He stopped. He turns his head. He sees her. Towards Whitechapel makes left. Okay, he sees her. She turns around. Then she says, when she looks back, he's turning left onto South. So he makes it to South. He makes a left. Then another left. She says, for a minute, it was convenient because we were walking home. Then he suddenly zipped right onto Wall Street. So they get here, and then he heads up here quickly up to Wall Street. Is that right? Or is he going on Broad Street up to Wall Street? He kept walking north. So, okay, so he comes around and he goes this way, north on Broad Street, and then he zips up to Wall Street. Where does he see her? He turned his head. I quickly pulled a newspaper. So he may have spotted her. Left again onto South Street. He may have spotted her here. If so, I don't see where he would have been going. But okay, so he comes back around. Maybe he didn't see her. He's heading up to Wall Street from here. Maybe that just means his home is at Wall Street. By the time she catches up, she can't see him, but he is zipping along, so maybe he did spot her. I do notice there is a police precinct here, though. So I wonder if he isn't a cop. But he didn't want to get caught, so he headed up to Wall Street, or he's one of our guys on Wall Street. All right, pretty cool. All right, but nothing jumps out at me from retracing that path. That leads me to believe, like, if he was headed somewhere but got spooked. Although I just do notice that he was heading up past the police precinct, but he kept on going past it to Wall Street. Okay. All right, let's continue reading. That was Alice. Okay, here's Roger. Roger Vernon is our medic. Dear Mr. Rycourt, pleasure to make your acquaintance. I followed up on most of the leads you sent Wiggins, starting with Dean Kimmel on Saturday afternoon around 3 p.m. I knocked on his door at his home on Maiden Lane, and Kimmel answered. Can I help you? Kimmel asked. I have a few questions. Let's talk about Wall Street. Not today, sir. If you don't mind, my mother-in-law is visiting, and I'd like some time with my family. Good day. I leaned in a bit. You're sure you're busy? I cracked my knuckles. Is Vernon is not our tough guy, but he looks like he's a bit resourceful. Is he our tough guy? Maybe he is, actually. Vernon is the war vet and medic. He frequents the boxing ring. I wouldn't want to get on his bad side. Okay, so we did send the right guy. He was able to stress them out a little bit. You sure you're busy? I cracked my knuckles. All right. Make it quick. I heard there's something wrong with AT&T. Noticed you've been selling. I own a lot of stock in AT&T. What's wrong with it? Listen, sir, Kimmel said. I don't know where you're getting your information. There's nothing wrong with AT&T. It's perfectly fine. Everything is going up. You should consider yourself lucky to own it. Now, if you don't mind, Kimmel shut the door and I headed home. I took a trip down to J.P. Morgan Chase's branch on Wall Street Monday morning to see what I could learn. We asked him to go there to talk to the other guy. I tried to dress my nicest, but I got a few looks on the way in. Maybe he wasn't the right person to send in for this. Should have ironed my tie more. May I please speak to Mr. Hartman? I asked the clerk at the front desk. Just one moment, she said. What is your name and business? Rogers, Virgil Rogers. I'd like to open an account, and my friend recommended him, I told her. Just a moment. While we waited, I took the opportunity to ask a couple of questions. Has Mr. Hartman worked here a long time? This is our chief suspect, the guy who's deliberately losing. Oh, yes, quite a long time, the receptionist answered. He's one of our best salesmen. Works with other branches all over the East Coast. The bank greatly values him. I took a seat and waited a few minutes on a surprisingly comfortable chair in the lobby until Hartman finally came downstairs and greeted me. He had the largest smile I'd ever seen in my life, but quickly realized I wasn't one of his rich buddies and loosened it a bit. We eventually moved upstairs to his office, and I explained that I'd be interested in opening an account. You would, huh? Hartman seemed surprised. Should have ironed that tie. Well, we have several different options you may be interested in, depending on the amount. There are $1, $10, $100, and $1,000 minimum accounts. They progressively offer more exclusive benefits. $10 level is an interest-bearing account that might interest you. I'm interested in the $1,000 account, I told him without flinching. Well then, he smiled. Now we're doing business, Mr. Rogers. For a moment, I thought maybe you were looking for general banking, but you're talking to the right man. If you'd be willing to invest $1,000 with us today, I can assure you we value our customers and reward their trust in us with our most closely guarded intelligence on the current trends. Let's walk downstairs and get your account set up. Then we can talk specifics. Actually, I'm interested in knowing some of these specifics right now. I cracked my knuckles. Oh, that kind of business, he smiled and quickly picked up his telephone. Mr. Kenter, would you join us? Within seconds, a very large man joined us. You get the gist of it. Anyway, I thought about fighting him, but Wiggins asked me to be subtle. I apologized for the misunderstanding and gave Kenter a $1 deposit for my new account. And that calmed things down. Kenter showed me the exit. I swung by AT&T on the way home and asked some questions about how the industry is doing because I was thinking of buying stocks at the exchange. I was told that the stocks are booming and always will, that it's a great time to buy. I suppose I could have strong-armed the front desk, but I learned my lesson at JP Morgan. Large corporations own plenty of muscle. I'll have to get those guys one-on-one in the future if I'm going to get anywhere. Okay, interesting. But AT&T is doing fine, huh? The problem is, if you borrow stocks and they're going up and up, you can't do anything. You can't make a profit on that. You can't borrow stocks. If they keep going up, that's worse for you because you can never sell them. It only works if they drop in value. Imagine you borrow 1 million shares at $1 each. You sell them and get $1 million, and then they go up in value. You can't buy them back with that $1 million anymore. You owe them back. So you'd have to spend $2 million to buy them back and then give them back, and you'd have lost $1 million. So, but we've also learned that Hartman has muscle at his command, and he is saying he's got good information. Got connections, closely guarded intelligence. Interesting. Any description of this guy who's the muscle? Got a big smile. He calls in Mr. Kentner. We should write that name down, right? If we think Hartman is our person of interest, we should know that he works with a Kenter. Large man, that's all we know about him. Okay, let me see. Good job, Alice, says Petiole. Maybe your dad is someone keeping an eye on her, saw she was following him and wanted to make sure. You never know. We were told in letter 1 that our guys were selling stocks everyone else was desperate to buy. If you have enough people involved, could you dump the stocks and make the price drop? That's an interesting question. Splits, you can't really control splits. And splits shouldn't really change the value. A stock might split at some point into double the number of shares, but they're supposed to have in value. So sometimes they make stocks go up because people are psychologically more likely to buy it, but a split stock shouldn't really do anything for you. But borrowing a stock, if it's going up, doesn't help you. But well, it could go up for a while as long as it drops before you have to repay it. If they haven't repaid any of the stocks and they know the market's going to crash, we should say we don't know if the stocks have been paid back yet. And the stocks don't have to drop they just have to drop before they get paid back. We don't know how long he's borrowed stocks. I guess that's important for us. That's very important for us to know. So let's find that. That's important, right? I mean, if he doesn't owe the stocks back yet, it's okay for them to keep going up. as long as the stock market is going to crash soon, imagine you borrowed millions and millions of stock, promising to pay them back in a couple months, and then you sell them all and they keep going up. You look like an idiot. You sold them for $1 a share, but they're no going up. But as long as the stock market crashes before you have to pay them back, then the stock market crashes, you buy them all for pennies and you sell them and you hand them back. So let's find that comment. Am I missing a page? What happened? We should have 4 pages. Oh, here. Okay. All right. So look. Shortly before he sold, he borrowed those same shares. That's fine. We don't know. Did it drop? It doesn't sound like AT&T has dropped. Okay. So then that's okay with our system is as long as he doesn't have to pay him back. When does he have to pay back the shares? Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to find that out, though. That seems like that might be very private information, but I'm not sure. So, yeah, the stocks don't have to drop right away as long as they drop before you have to pay them back. Pump them up, hype them up to raise the price, then you sell them, then the price drops. As long as the price drops below what you originally borrowed them at, or as long as it drops, it doesn't even have to drop back to what you originally bought them at. As long as it drops, it still has to drop. It still has to drop, but it doesn't even have to drop below the original price. Better for you if it does. But the point is you sell it when it is valuable, and then you know it's going to drop. You buy back what you owe, and you profit the difference. This is 1929 in September. So, yeah. All right. So let's also make note of the let's make note of some of this other information. Nothing's wrong with AT&T. It's fine. Everything is going up. You should consider yourself lucky to own it, he says. All right, so it hasn't fallen yet, it seems. Has he worked there for a long time? She says yes. Yes, there were some notes here I wanted to make as we were reading this. AT&T stocks are booming and always will. Yeah, everyone's in euphoria about the stock market. So at this point, they're going to learn a hard lesson soon. Oh, I thought there was some other note I wanted to make about something. Really need to number these pages. 1, 2, 3. Oh, we heard someone else's name I wanted to make a note about. One, 2, 3. And this is 4. Okay. I feel like there were some notes I wanted to take. All right, let's read our last page and then we'll go back and find it. This is from Joe Philly, and this is the beat cop who's a drinker. Dear Mr. Reichler, Wiggins picked the right guy for the job when he called you up. Probably the best lead I've ever gone down. I threw on my pork pie and drove down to Francis Tavern Friday afternoon. Took a seat at the bar. Give me a Tom Collins. He asked if I wanted to hold the gin. Sure, hold it in my glass. You're a funny guy, he said. Wish I could, but you know the deal. I'll get you a soda with lemon. Oh, they know him. For Christ's sake, I muttered and handed him a nickel. Damn government. Pulled a flask out and poured it in. He didn't care. You know anything about a card game? I want in. The bartender laughed. You? Very funny. Put on a suit and take a walk over to Wall Street if you want to get invited. What are those rich boys doing anyway? I know why they come here. It's not for the soda. Look, if you're asking me what I think you're asking, I wouldn't have it. It's hard enough keeping this place afloat nowadays. If you need an address for my side business, I'd give it to you. It seems like you don't need it. I stayed a while and had a few more sodas till the gang all showed up. There was your boy Launt, Cheshire Cat, that's the guy with the big smile, and a bunch of other suits. A couple of them were having a good time, and a couple were miffed. Some Hollywood type was running around passing out papers and telling them where to sit. I got into a trance thinking about it. When I looked up, they were gone. Bartender was nudging me. Closing time. I'll get him next time. He passed out at his seat. Hollywood type was running around passing out papers and telling people where to sit. Okay, that's the guy running the game. Okay, so look at him. He's like, you sent the right guy. This is a great lead, because he was just sitting at the bar drinking. Okay, that's pretty good. All right, useless. All right, we're going to have to think harder about where to send him. Okay, so that's our letter for today. Pretty great stuff and getting more interesting. Now let's figure out what we're going to do. What do we want to investigate and who do we want to see? Okay, we clearly want to investigate this thing with the police, right? Should we take a break and then come back and discuss what to do? Yes, we should. We've been playing for an hour and 25 minutes. Okay. We don't normally break up these sessions, but we're going to. All right, let's take our 8-minute break. And in 8 minutes, for those of you who want to help us figure out where to send which investigators to follow up, I'll see you in 8 minutes. The rest of you, you may want to check out early if you don't care about this part. You're just here for the story. I'll see you in 8 minutes. All right. So we're going to decide where to send people and what we want to investigate. The thing I wanted to make note of before was the description of the person that Alice was tailing. We're just told he was wearing a bowler hat and a trench coat. Sounds like a disguise as a detective might wear. I think, though, one thing that we should reconcile with is the fact that we were suspecting Hartman is losing so that he can get on the phone, right? But we should note that it's Hamoud and Kimmel who are buying AT&T and the railroad. So Hartman might be helping Hamoud as well. It seems like maybe are they all in it together? I mean, they can't be, they probably are not working with Carrier, the guy who's running the game, because if they were all working together, it seems like they wouldn't even have to deal with this game charade. All right, well, I've got two people that I'm really interested in talking to. First of all, this is my one I really want to follow up the most about. Well, I guess we've got a little bit of a problem, don't we? Why do we have a problem? Because our theory was that they were insider information gaining a little bit of an edge, finding out about a stock that's going to go up or fall. But we're being told that the stocks are just going up, 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 up. So then, you don't need inside information for that, do you? You need to know about a crash coming. Okay. Well, we have to follow up on this idea. That means we need to talk to Margaret Layton. But let's check in with the chat first, and then we'll talk about who to send there. Arlene says, I'm thinking about the guy with the feud, the long list of things that affect you mentioned the game. Debbie said, talking about the stock market crash. All right, let's just pretend we don't know anything about the stock market crash. Another thing regarding Joe, the bartender reminded us this is during Prohibition. We need to keep him out of trouble with the law. As for Vernon, he seems to immediately resort to threatening people, which isn't always the best plan. It's true. We should stop sending him where we don't want people threatened. I think we should look more closely into the police investigation into Lott. Just because he's our client doesn't mean he's squeaky clean. Wiggins should check with his police contacts. Okay. If the stock is accelerating, you might know it'll crash. That's a good question. Okay. Yes. So the two people I'm most interested in following up on, I guess, three people. One is Margaret Layton, the phone operator that needed backup. The second person is the detective that's investigating Michael Lott. And the third person is the person that we didn't get to today who has a feud with Michael Lott. So let's do those three things first, and then we'll go from there. Okay, now, Alexis Cohen the cop. The problem is what I it's I guess we should maybe think it's likely that she works at the precinct in the financial district. Or we could look up Alexis Cohen in the white pages. Let's make our notes here. So Alexis Cohen, NYPD. This is about launch. So let's see if we can get her name. But she might be better off visiting at work. Then we'll decide who to send there. Cohen with no H. Cohen Alexis lives on 17th Street. That's her home. Chelsea, she lives. That doesn't mean, though, that she doesn't work in the financial district. Okay, well, either we're going to find her at home, or we could try the financial district precinct, which, if we look up in the yellow pages, let's see. Haven't spent much time in the yellow pages yet. We could have a private eye that Alice was following. Okay, let's see what precinct is in the financial district. Financial district precinct, Nassau and Liberty. Okay, 81410. Okay, so these are the two places that we're likely to be able to talk to Alexis Cohen. If indeed that is a real police detective, which I would think it would be. All right, now, while I've got the yellow pages out, let me look up insurance companies, even though we know the names, so we would be able to look it up by name. But what is the name of Hamoud's company? American Family Insurance. Okay, so there's Hamoud's insurance company, 64143. So I'll put this on another one. Six 4143. This is American Family Insurance. And we probably recorded his home address as well. So feel like we should be visiting him at home, but maybe we'll decide that in a minute. Let me just write it down. There's Hamoud, 160 Front Street, 48290. He's in FD 35. All right. So, and then the last person I was really interested in visiting is Margaret Leighton. This is, in fact, one of my more interesting ones. Margaret Leighton. Let's see if we can find her. Huh. Margaret Leighton, Layton. Well, we've got an Ethel. Could be living with her sister. Let's see if we can find her work. Where does she work? Her name is Margaret Leighton. Is that the one with the at the Baltimore operator? I don't think we know how to find that. Oh, here's Leighton Moses. Margaret. Oh, there was an issue about Matt. Matt was saying that maybe he was in the reverse directory. They're only initials, and so there was a little bit of an issue there. But even if there wasn't, sometimes the husband would be in the white pages and not the wife. That would be a little more likely. LW's Lower West Side, that's pretty close to Financial District. So we might want to have someone stop by this in hopes of finding Margaret Leighton. We want Margaret. Check Moses Leighton. LW 27 5 0667. Okay. That might not be where Margaret works, but that might be Margaret's home. All right. I don't think we have an entry for Baltimore phone operator in our white pages. I thought we checked that out, but we could check again. Matt says if there's an issue with the directory typos, the investigator will figure it out for us. Yeah, I think that makes sense. We just try to do our best to give them a heads up of what we want. Save some money, maybe. There is a Baltimore and Ohio bus company, but that's not what we want. Okay. Now, where else? We do have to decide who to send to these places. You might think we should send our ex-police to the police department. He might have some pull. That probably makes sense, right? I was just thinking, I mean, he might have a bad reputation, but he's likely to talk to a police officer who doesn't know about his bad reputation. A police officer is likely to get more information. I think he'll also know, like, how to ask him about, and he'll know whether you can visit someone at his home. Okay, so let's send our cop there. All right. So our alcoholic beat cop, we're going to send to find Alexis Cohen, ask about Michael Want case. And then we can tell him the two places we think that she would be, either in the financial district precinct, 81410, or home 33978. Okay, fine. And then that's probably all we want him to do. He's too dangerous. Now, if I knew that that was the secretary's for sure house, I might be inclined to send Alice. Sure, let's send Alice, don't you think? Okay, it looks like Kristen is agreeing with us. Send the ex-cop to talk to the cop. That makes sense. If Joe doesn't work, Wiggins can speak to Cohen. Do we still want Alice to find out about the operators? I think so. I think we should send Alice to talk to Margaret Layton, the operator. I think woman to woman, she's more likely to give this girl some information. Hardworking woman is more likely to... Lincoln says Alice can only do one lead, so if she goes to the wrong Layton. But where else are we going to send her? It is a little nerve-wracking just sending her to an apartment. Women don't like women. Well, I think this is a case where you've got a hard-working woman talking to a girl who's ambitious, and I think she would like that. But also, I think Alice is resourceful. Would Margaret be willing to talk to a 15-year-old? I think she would. I think she would. So also, I think Alice is resourceful. If Margaret doesn't work there, I'll bet she could find where she does. Okay. So I'm going to say that we send Alice to find Margaret Layton, and we think possibly Lower West Side, 27 block 27 50667. We're going to rely on her resourcefulness to find Margaret. But now, what do we want her to ask Margaret about? Okay, so we're going to ask her about when Hartman filled in as backup operator. Did she notice anything odd about this guy? And then also, could someone here insider trading information as an operator? Some general background information. Someone here, valuable insider information. Okay. I don't think we should underestimate that what Alice is able to get out some information. Debbie says, I agree it's better to send Alice to a place of work. I do agree with that. Lower West Side, it's a pretty safe neighborhood. All right, why don't we say this? I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's let Alice try to locate Margaret Layton. That'll be her primary job. Maybe she can ask around. She can ask Wiggins, ask your dad, ideas. And then we have a possible home address. Okay, so her primary job is not even necessarily to talk to Margaret. Her primary job is to find Margaret. All right, that's her little assignment. And then if you find her, all right, that's good. That's a good lead for Alice to work on. That'll test her little detective skills. All right, now, I think we might send our boxer to Hamoud Family Insurance, because Hamoud may need a little pressuring to talk to us. So I think Roger didn't do too bad. He didn't do too great at JP Morgan Chase, a big bank. But this is a small little operation. I think this guy could be pressured. Is it Hamoud 4143? Hamoud at American Family Insurance. Ask about the feud with Michael. What? Anything else we want asked about? We're going to refine this letter over Discord later. So we're just going to get the basics out here, and it's too premature to send a burglar in, I think. All right. Those are my main things. Chat's talking a little bit about some ideas. Tell Vernon not to start threatening people immediately. Okay, I'll make a note of that. Don't threaten till you have to. All right, now, I'll tell you what. We should probably have the cop ask if, in addition to talking to Alexis Cohen about the investigation, ask if anyone would be staking out Michael Want's house. If not, it's tempting to wonder if someone hired a PI to stake out Michael Want's house. There's only one problem. If you look, what you'll notice is that there are huge numbers of private investigators, and they're ton of them are down in the financial district. J&J Detective Agency Financial District, JD's Detective Agency Financial District, New York Detective Agency Financial District. I don't know why they were all located down there. Global Detective Agency New York branch. I'm not sure why they were down there, but they're down there and they're in the Civic Center right next door. Pinkerton's in Financial District. So just walking into a random detective agency and asking, and they're not going to tell us anyway, right? So I don't think we can do that till we get a better lead on that. Now the chat is thinking about sending the burglar to get the card game scores. Well, look, first of all, this guy's a reformed burglar. He's a bit unsavory. Can hire him if you don't mind his way of getting things done. He served time for burglary. Okay. Well, first of all, he's not going to go burgle some Wall Street broker's house for 50 cents. It's going to cost us a lot. And the idea of us, we get caught, we're going to go to jail. We have to be, we'd have to have a really strong reason to start burgling someone's house. We're not just going to go burgle someone's house on some wild goose chase that the cards, that the leads might mean something, that the scores might mean something. Does this all have to do with feud, reputation? Why did they get into a feud? Because he didn't pay him back in time? Okay, well, maybe we follow up on a couple of these other leads. Let's see. We have guests, Ben Carson. They're both at Capital Growth Investment. The guests at the card game. Do we want to follow up on that? Okay, I want this answer. This is very important to me. When do the stocks have to get paid back? How are we going to find that information? That seems like only Michael Lant, our stockbroker. He's the closest thing we have to an expert. All right, I think we're going to have to ask Michael Lant to try to investigate this for us. We want to find out, can he ask around and find out when the borrowed stocks, like AT&T, have to be paid back by a mood. I got one more suggestion. If Hamoud is our strong guy, because Hamoud is doing these trades and he's got a feud and we haven't seen him, I think what we do is maybe we spook him a little bit. Also go to Hamoud's house. Is that right? Can we go to his house and maybe we'll spook him a little bit or talk to the wife? Let me just see what we got for under Hamoud. I'm sort of a little bit focused on Hamoud as our second line of inquiry. 160 Front Street, 48290. We didn't go there yet, huh? Notes. It's our letter 2 reply. Where's our letter 1 reply? So we never had anyone go to Hamoud's. We didn't even try to go to Hamoud's house. We just visited Hartman at the bank. We could try visiting Hartman at his home too. They didn't have a great run-in at work. I wonder what would happen if we send Roger to Hartman's home. That would look a little fishy, wouldn't it? But I am very curious about Hamoud now. So I wonder, Debbie says if we send our guy to his home, he's going to have him arrested. Well, you might be right. Okay, I'll tell you what. Let us have our guy. Roger Vernon is our main workhorse here. I am going to have him go to Hamoud house. Go to Hamoud house. Maybe we'll just say try the I mean, the wife's not going to let him in and talk to him, is she? I was just thinking, what about sending Alice to the house while he's at work? Could she talk to the wife? What is the wife going to say? All right, we'll just give our guy, if not at work here, visit at his house. That way it will at least get him talked to. All right. Jackie would be good for tailing, but he's expensive. Absolutely right. Here's something we could ask. Do we have I was just thinking, can we get physical descriptions to match up with Alice's description of the person who trailed her, but I don't think she got a good enough look at his face. All right, I think we're good for now with this. I think this is where we'll leave it, but we'll discuss over the next couple of days in the Discord. I wonder, should we be telling Michael Lant about this investigation into him? He is our client. Or do we want to learn a little bit more before we tell him that some cop's asking for him? I guess we had a good conversation with this cop. We sort of want to stay on good terms. Well, maybe we don't say anything yet. Kristen says, what's the benefit of telling him? Well, I could see a couple benefits. First of all, he is our client, so maybe we have an obligation to him. But secondly, he could say, oh, I know what this is about. It's about when I was accused of doing something else. Yeah, I mean, I think it might be, we may find ourselves hiring the expensive guy to do some research into American Family Insurance if we start to get a whiff that they're up to no good. I just don't think we're there yet. All right, let's end it here. We've been playing for an hour and 40 minutes. No, 2 hours and 15 minutes. Okay, longer than usual, but we got a really interesting development in today's letter. YouTube says we're down to 16 concurrent viewers and 13 likes. All right, we'll be playing something again this week. I hope the rest of you will join me next week when we get our third letter. If you want to talk about this case in the meantime, between this week and next week, there is a Discord server for this channel. You'll find a link on the YouTube page somewhere. There's a special section where we talk about the play-by-mail games, and there'll be some discussion of this case and a shared link to our official reply if you want to suggest anything. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.